Greetings, the Hijabi Gamer here, and this is a Star Trek video. Actually, it's going to be the first in probably 3, because, well, word has reached me that they are thinking about making Kirk bi and just messing with Spock and messing with the relationship between Kirk and Spock. And this is something that I have dreaded, and just no. No more. Just leave Star Trek alone. You know what? Stop making Star Trek. Give it a break. Just stop. Because you're just killing it. So I realized that in order for me to really go into why I'm so against this, I would need to go into my personal history in Star Trek and my experiences with fan fiction. And that if I did this, it would end up being a ridiculously long video. Because you see, I got into Star Trek very differently than most people. And I need to go into that to explain how I got into fan fiction, which is where this whole thing is coming from. This whole Kirk is bi and it has a relationship with Spock comes out of fan fiction. And there's a lot of it. And let's just say I never cared for the K/S stuff. Really didn't care for it. So I need to go to my personal experiences with Star Trek. Now, most people get into Star Trek through the TV show. Not me. I got into Star Trek through the novels. Now, you also need to know the context. My family didn't get cable television until 2012. Yeah. My father, and I really missed this. He didn't like television. For most of my childhood, my father was against television. So when we were living on Long Island, we had basic channels. All of our friends had cable, but not us. We had an antenna on the roof and, the regular basic channels. However, when we moved from Long Island to New Jersey, the house we moved into was set up for cable. The previous owner had cable, no antenna on the roof. So, yeah, and we weren't getting cable. We begged my dad, he was not getting cable. I really genuinely miss that. I think one of the blessings I have had was that my childhood was not, we didn't have cable. So in order to watch anything on television, you needed to use the bunny ears on top of the television, which meant if you were lucky, you managed to get 1 or 2 of the basic channels, generally with a lot of snow. Not always. That's how I saw my first Star Trek ever. The first thing I ever watched on Star Trek was Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Now, imagine, you have never seen or heard of Star Trek ever before watching Star Trek IV. Yeah, it was very confusing. It was fun, it was funny, I enjoyed it, but it made no sense in some areas. I remember asking my brother, what the hell's going on with Spock? And my brother's like, oh, he died. And I'm like, because my brother had seen Star Trek 2 and 3. I'm like, what? He died? Imagine trying to explain Star Trek 2 and 3 without ever seeing them. It's not easy. And he was just being really quick about it. So I had no idea what was going on. Anyway, not long after seeing Star Trek 4, we went to the mall. And I remember my favorite place was the bookstore. So I'm looking through the bookstore, looking at all the books, and I come across, get this, Star Trek novels. So I bought a few and fell in love with the novels. I didn't even know there was a TV show based on Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Because, come on, there are a lot of movies that don't have TV shows. So it didn't even occur to me that there was a TV show. So I was reading the novels. Basically the novels got me through the SATs. Because my English went, my English level just jumped after reading all these novels. I didn't even find out that there was a TV show until I saw it in a bookstore. Yeah, there was a book called Star Trek The Original Series Episode Guide. And I went, what? There's a TV show? And I'm flipping through it and I bought it and it was just exciting to read about these episodes that I had not known existed. Then I found out there was an animated series in The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. And it was really exciting. But I didn't even get to see it for a while. And when I finally did, there was the excitement of seeing something that I had read about for a very long time. Keep in mind, like I said, there was also no streaming services. There's only dial-up internet, which, yeah, when you have one phone line, you really don't get to use the internet often. So when I finally got to see Star Trek, the original series, the TV show, it was exciting at first because you're seeing on screen something that you had read about. So it's like seeing the Harry Potter movies for the first time after reading the novels. And it's exciting and it's cool and to see it in front of you. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but the books are better. And that's the same thing for me with Star Trek, the original series. Yeah, it's okay, but the books are better. I love the Star Trek novels. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in the novels are my favorite. Now, Sisko is my favorite overall captain. And Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek TV show. I haven't read nearly as many Deep Space Nine novels as I've read the original series. But Sisko to me is my favorite TV captain. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are my favorite novel captains. Well, novel crew. Captain and crew. Though Spock was a captain for a while. I mean, there are some really, if you have not read some of the Star Trek novels, I would highly recommend them. There's some really good ones. At least the older ones. I mean, there was Uhura's Song. There's this one book I loved just because of the concept. I mean, some of it didn't make sense at all, where it's like Kirk is missing, and because he left McCoy in command, Spock couldn't take over command, even though Spock outranks him, but because Kirk left McCoy, until Kirk came back, Spock couldn't take over. So it was McCoy against Klingons, and just the idea of McCoy in command was awesome. Shadows on the Sun was the story of McCoy and his divorce. Sarek was a great novel about Sarek and his history with Amanda. I mean, I could go on and on. There's some really, really good Star Trek novels. And then they got creative, so they would do, I mean, this was back when things were creative. They would do novels where they would cross over between all 4 series. It would be like, they wouldn't exactly like meet or anything like that, but the idea would go between all 4. So you'd have 4 novels, one for The Next Generation, one for the original series, one for Deep Space Nine, and one for Voyager. And the covers of all 4 books would come together to make one big cover. So there were a couple of years where I was looking forward to it, where it's like every year they would release these 4 novels that were all tied together. There was a Next Generation series I also read that was all about the Borg. So to me, the novels, the book is better. But Sisko is my favorite TV captain. I watched Deep Space Nine. I think I watched like a season in a day and a half. So every 3 days I was watching 2 seasons. Some ridiculous. I got into the DVDs. I got them from the library and just watched them one after another because I loved Deep Space Nine. But for some reason I never got into the novels as much. So that's what led me into fan fiction. Because, you start running out of novels to read. So I'll go into that in my next video because there's a lot to say about Star Trek fan fiction. But this is how I got into Star Trek. Let me know what you think. Like I said, to me, the books are better. And, yeah. I eventually did see all the movies. And in fact, I even have seen the Kelvin movies. And honestly, the one thing I liked about the Kelvin movies was just Karl Urban as McCoy. I would see a Star Trek 4 Kelvin movie just to see Karl Urban as McCoy. I hate what they did to the Romulans. I think, the stories were awful. But Karl Urban as McCoy, I hear like Leonard Nimoy actually cried when he saw Karl Urban as McCoy because it reminded him so much of DeForest Kelley. So it's made me interested in seeing more of what Karl Urban has done because he was great as McCoy. Anyway, let me know what you think. Like I said, I have a very different way of getting into Star Trek than most. Have you read the Star Trek novels? What are your favorites? Let me know down in the comments below. And like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you in the tower.